The moment I signed the final foreclosure papers, my father's voice echoed in my head. "Emma, you're too cautious with money. That's why you'll never really live. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." I stood in the courthouse hallway, manila folder clutched to my chest, watching as the realtor handed me the keys to the house I'd grown up in, the house my parents had lost after squandering the inheritance my grandmother left specifically for me. The cold metal of those keys pressed into my palm like a verdict. Not guilty, not anymore. "Congratulations, Ms. Parker," the realtor said with a professional smile. "The property is officially yours." I nodded, unable to find words that wouldn't. Crack. 6 months earlier, I'd discovered the truth about my grandmother's will. $175,000 that was meant to fund my education, my future, my dreams. Money I never saw a penny of because my parents had borrowed it all. When the bank foreclosed on their house, they acted shocked, blindsided by cruel fate. But I knew better. I knew exactly where the money had gone, and now I was taking back the only thing left, the walls that held 15 years of memories, both beautiful and bitter. I wasn't just buying a house, I was buying back my power. My name is Emma Parker, and growing up in Portland as the eldest daughter meant one thing in the Parker household: responsibility without recognition. Our modest craftsman with the blue shutters and wraparound porch sat in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where sprinklers hissed in summer and chimney smoke curled in winter. From the outside, we looked picture perfect. The reality inside those walls told a different story. My younger sister Olivia emerged from the womb with my father's charisma and my mother's beauty, a genetic lottery win that somehow translated to a lifetime pass on accountability. 4 years younger, she danced through life while I walked carefully behind, cleaning up messes, both literal and figurative. "Emma's the sensible one," my mother would announce at dinner parties, as if being dependable was a consolation prize for being less interesting. "Olivia's our firecracker." Firecrackers are admired. Sensible is forgotten. I studied accounting at community college, working nights at a coffee shop to pay tuition while Olivia attended a private university out of state. "Your sister needs the experience," my father explained when I questioned how they could afford it. "You're already so settled." The word landed like an insult, though I couldn't explain why at the time. My grandmother Martha, my mother's mother, was the only one who saw me. Really saw me. She lived 3 hours away in a small coastal town, but we spoke weekly. When I visited, she'd make almond cookies and tell me stories about being a bookkeeper in the 1960s. "The trick to surviving in this world, Emma, is knowing your worth before someone else tries to name your price," she'd say, pressing crinkled bills into my hand when my parents weren't looking. "This is just between us squirrels. I saved every dollar." I was 24 when Grandma Martha passed away unexpectedly. At the funeral, I stood stone-faced beside my mother, who sobbed dramatically while checking her phone. Olivia couldn't make it. She was on a semester abroad in Spain, one I later learned my parents had remortgaged the house to fund. The family gathered at our home after the service. I overheard my uncle mention the will. Martha always was careful with her money, left quite a nice sum for Emma's education. I froze, plate of finger sandwiches in hand. This was the first I'd heard of any inheritance. Later that night, I approached my father in his study. "Dad, Uncle Jim mentioned something about Grandma. Leaving money for my education?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "Oh, that. Yes, your grandmother left you something, but it's being handled. Nothing for you to worry about." "But it's my inheritance," I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue. "Don't I need to sign something? Shouldn't I know how much it is?" He sighed, finally meeting my eyes with that look. the one that made me feel simultaneously foolish and selfish for asking. Emma, your mother and I are the executors. The money is in a trust. It's earmarked for your future, but right now we have some family expenses to handle first. Your sister's tuition isn't paying itself. So you're using my inheritance for Olivia's school. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. We're using family money for family needs, he corrected, his tone hardening. When you have children, you'll understand that sometimes fairness isn't about equal parts. It's about greatest need. I didn't argue. I never did. That night, I lay awake calculating what quite a nice sum might mean. Enough for grad school? A down payment on a house? The possibilities stretched before me like roads I'd never been permitted to travel. Weeks passed, then months. No mention of the inheritance resurfaced. I stopped asking after the third conversation ended with my mother in tears, accusing me of caring more about money than family loyalty. Instead, I did what I always did. Worked harder. I finished my accounting degree, landed an entry-level position at a local firm, and moved into a shoebox apartment with a roommate. Life marched forward. I dated occasionally, saved consistently, called home weekly. My parents remodeled their kitchen. It was time for an upgrade, Mom gushed, while I calculated how many years of ramen it would take to pay off my student loans. Olivia graduated and promptly moved to New York to find herself, with a monthly allowance that exceeded my rent. 3 years after my grandmother's death, the truth surfaced like a body in a lake. Unexpected and impossible to ignore. It happened at Thanksgiving. I was in the guest bathroom, my childhood bedroom having been converted to my mother's meditation space the moment I moved out, when I noticed an envelope wedged behind the vanity. Retrieving it revealed bank statements, old ones from around the time of Grandma's death. And there it was, a deposit for $175,000 from Ems Rogers' estate. My grandmother's married name, my inheritance. Further down the statement, transfers to O. Parker Study Abroad program, withdrawals for kitchen renovation, payments to Lexus Financial, new vehicle. My inheritance hadn't been placed in any trust. It had been spent, all of it, on Olivia, on renovations, on a car I'd never seen. I sat on the closed toilet lid, papers trembling in my hands, as decades of family loyalty revealed itself for what it truly was. Exploitation, disguised as love. I didn't confront them that night, or the next day. I smiled through pumpkin pie and family photos, hugged everyone goodbye, and drove back to my apartment in silence. For weeks, I said nothing, did nothing, as rage and grief crystallized into something harder, something with edges. Then came the call that changed everything. "Honey, we need to talk." My mother's voice wavered over the phone. "There's been a financial setback." The setback was foreclosure. Bad investments, credit card debt, another loan for Olivia's startup idea, a luxury dog accessory line that never materialized beyond Instagram posts. The bank was taking the house in 90 days. "We're devastated," Mom sniffled. "Your father's pride is shattered." "What about my inheritance?" The question escaped before I could swallow it. Silence stretched between us like a tightrope. "Emma, that money is long gone," she finally whispered. "We needed it for the family. You've always been so independent, so capable. Olivia needed the support more. And now you need my support too." It wasn't a question. "Just until we get back on our feet. We could stay with you while—" "I have a roommate in a one-bedroom apartment," I reminded her. "Well, the couch. Then, just for a little while?" I ended the call with vague promises to figure something out. Then I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and spent the day researching foreclosure purchases. What most people don't realize about foreclosures is that anyone can buy them. even the daughter of the defaulting owners. There's no rule against it, no moral clause. Just paperwork and money. The kind I'd been saving since Grandma Martha pressed those first crinkled bills into my palm and told me to know my worth. I contacted the bank, reviewed the listing details, calculated exactly how much I needed and how quickly I could liquidate my savings. It would drain me completely, leave me with nothing but a house and determination. But something deep inside me had awakened. Something that refused to be the family safety net one moment longer. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I took the day off work, dressed in my most professional blazer, and arrived an hour early. My parents had no idea I would be there. They'd refused to attend what they called the public humiliation of our family. Only 2 other bidders showed. Interest in the aging craftsman with outdated bathrooms and a new kitchen. When the bidding started at $320,000, my hand rose with confidence I didn't know I possessed. One competitor dropped out immediately. The other, a house flipper in a golf shirt, eyed me suspiciously but bowed out after my third counterbid. Sold for $345,000 to bidder number 7, the auctioneer announced. I signed papers until my wrist ached, transferred funds I'd accumulated through years of overtime and moonlighting tax prep during busy seasons. Accepted congratulations from bank representatives who had no idea they were witnessing an act of both reclamation and rebellion. My parents received the news via formal letter from the bank. I wasn't present when they read it, but my phone exploded with notifications within hours. Dad, Emma, call immediately. There's been a mistake with the house. Mom, please pick up. We need to talk now. Olivia, WTF did you do? I silenced my phone and drove to Home Depot, where I purchased 3 new door locks, a toolbox, and a no trespassing sign. By sunset, I had changed every lock on the house that had never truly been mine until now. As darkness fell, I sat alone on the porch swing, keys heavy in my pocket, waiting. They would come, of that I was certain. The only question was what version of themselves they would bring. The loving parents who needed just one more favor? Or the true faces behind the masks, angry that their safety net had developed boundaries? I didn't wait long. Headlights swept the driveway at 8:43 p.m. My father's voice carried through the evening air before the car door even closed. Emma Jean Parker, what do you think you're doing? I remained seated as they approached, my mother's heels clicking rapidly up the walkway, my father's face contorted in an expression I'd seen directed at service workers who disappointed him, but never before at me. The locks are changed, I said simply. Of course they're changed. You've apparently lost your mind. He jiggled the handle uselessly. Open this door immediately. I can't do that. My mother stepped forward, confusion battling with indignation. Emma, honey, this isn't funny. This is our home. Actually, I pulled the deed from my bag, held it up to the porch light. It's mine. Purchased legally at auction today. With what money? My father demanded. The irony of his question struck me like a physical blow. With every dollar I've saved since I was 16, every overtime shift, every bonus, every penny Grandma Martha ever gave me. I met his gaze steadily. Every cent of the inheritance I never received. The mention of the inheritance changed. Something in their faces, a flicker of guilt quickly submerged beneath righteous anger. You had no right, my mother hissed. That was family money. Yes, it was. My family money, left specifically to me. We needed it, she cried. Your sister always came first, I finished. And I accepted that. For years I accepted that. But not anymore. My father's voice lowered dangerously. So this is revenge? Taking our home because you're jealous of your sister? I shook my head, something like pity rising in my chest. This isn't revenge, Dad. It's boundaries. It's consequences. I stood, keys jingling softly as I moved toward the door. You have 30 days to remove your belongings. I'll be staying here starting tonight. You can call my cell to arrange times to pack. And where exactly are we supposed to go? My mother's voice cracked. The question they should have asked themselves before spending my future on kitchen countertops and luxury cars hung between us, unanswered. That's not my problem anymore, I said quietly, stepping inside and closing the door. Through the beveled glass, I watched them stand frozen on the porch, illuminated by the same light that had welcomed me home from school, from college, from work. A light that had never quite shone as brightly on me as it had on Olivia. I turned, the deadbolt with a decisive click. Then I walked through each room of the house that was finally, legally mine. The living room where family photos prominently featured Olivia's achievements, while mine were relegated to small frames on side tables. The dining room where holiday meals became stages for my sister's stories, while I served and cleared plates. The kitchen my parents had renovated with my inheritance. I climbed the stairs slowly, past Olivia's preserved bedroom, still decorated, with her high school cheerleading trophies despite her years of absence, to my converted space, now filled with my mother's yoga equipment and essential oil diffusers. Standing in what had once been my sanctuary, I felt no triumph, no vengeful satisfaction. Just quiet certainty that I had done what was necessary. Not to hurt them, but to stop allowing them to hurt me. My phone buzzed again. Olivia this time. You can't just make Mom and Dad homeless. What kind of daughter does that? I typed back a response before I could second-guess myself. The kind who finally realized she deserves more than leftovers. The kind who stopped setting herself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Then I silenced my phone, unrolled a sleeping bag in what would soon be my bedroom again, and for the first time in years, slept without the weight of unmet expectations pressing on my chest. In the morning, the real work would begin. There would be tears and accusations, flying monkeys and flying guilt. But tonight, in this moment, I was finally home. In a house that was mine, in a body that was mine, in a life that was finally, unquestionably mine. Morning arrived with harsh clarity through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, I forgot where I was, disoriented by the sleeping bag tangled around my legs and the yoga mat beneath me. Then reality flooded back. This was my childhood bedroom, in my newly purchased house. My house. The texts had continued well past midnight. My sister called 17 times. My father's messages evolved from demanding to pleading to threatening legal action. My mother sent a single message at 3:14 a.m. I never thought my own daughter could be so heartless. I sat up slowly, stretching muscles stiff from the hard floor, and began mentally cataloging what needed to be done. First, coffee. The kitchen might be renovated beyond recognition with my inheritance money. But surely the fundamental purpose remained the same. Downstairs, sunlight streamed through windows that needed cleaning. The house felt strangely hollow, like a stage set abandoned, mid-performance. I ran my fingers along the quartz countertops my mother had bragged about to her book club friends. Italian import, she'd gushed. We spared no expense. My expense, as it turned out. The coffee maker, a professional-grade monstrosity that probably cost more than my monthly rent, sat gleaming beside the refrigerator. I figured out its complicated buttons eventually, sipping the resulting brew while sitting cross-legged on the kitchen island, something my mother would have scolded me for in her house. But this wasn't her house anymore. My phone rang again. Olivia. For the 18th time, I answered. Have you completely lost your mind? Her voice pitched high with righteous indignation. No hello, no how are you, just accusation. Good morning to you too, I replied, surprising myself with my calm. Mom is practically catatonic. Dad is talking about lawyers. What were you thinking? I took another sip of coffee. I was thinking that I'm tired of being the family ATM with no acknowledgement and no reciprocity. This is about money? Seriously? You're throwing our parents onto the street over money? Her voice cracked theatrically. In New York, Olivia had dabbled in off-Broadway productions between finding herself adventures funded by our parents. This isn't about money, I corrected. It's about respect. It's about the fact that Grandma Martha left me an inheritance that would have changed my life, and Mom and Dad spent every penny of it on you and themselves without even telling me. Silence hummed between us. Then, what inheritance? The question caught me off guard. The money Grandma left me when she died. $175,000. I didn't know anything about that. Her voice had lost its theatrical edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like genuine confusion. Convenient, I said, but doubt crept in. Could Olivia really not have known? The money that paid for your semester in Spain? Your startup attempt? The money that renovated this kitchen and bought Dad's Lexus? Emma. Her voice had gone quiet. They told me you weren't interested in college abroad, that you were too focused on your career to waste time traveling. The startup was a loan from them. I've been making payments. Small ones, but still. My grip tightened on the coffee mug. And the kitchen? The car? Investment in the property, according to Dad. Early retirement splurge. She paused. Are you saying all of that came from money Grandma specifically left for you? Yes. The word felt inadequate for the magnitude of the betrayal. I didn't know, she repeated. I swear, Emma, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to dismiss her claim outright, the convenient ignorance of the favored child, but something in her voice gave me pause. Olivia had always been self-centered, privileged, occasionally thoughtless, but she'd never been deliberately cruel. What matters now? I said, steering us away from a conversation I wasn't ready to have, is that I own this house legally. They have 30 days to remove their belongings. I've changed the locks to ensure boundaries are respected while that happens. They're staying at the Residence Inn on Powell, she said after a moment. It's draining what little savings they had left. That's not my concern anymore. The words came out harder than I intended. Emma, they're our parents. Yes, they are, and they lied to both of us, apparently. Another silence stretched between us, this one less hostile, more contemplative. I'm coming to Portland, she finally said. I need to see what's happening for myself. Fine. You can stay in your old room if you want. It's exactly as you left it, shrine intact. And if I want to let Mom and Dad in to get their things, you call me first and I'll be present. Those are the terms. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, trying to process Olivia's reaction. Had she really been in the dark about the inheritance? About the extent of our parents' financial manipulations? The thought was both comforting and disturbing. Comforting, because maybe my sister wasn't complicit. Disturbing because it meant our parents' deception ran even deeper than I'd realized. I spent the rest of the day taking inventory of the house, making lists of repairs needed, changes I wanted to make. The master bathroom's heated floors would have to go, an unnecessary luxury I couldn't afford to maintain. The garden had been neglected. The basement needed waterproofing. A lifetime of knowing this house made its flaws apparent to me in ways no home inspector could match. As evening approached, a text from my mother arrived. We need to collect essential items tomorrow. Medications, clothes, documents. I replied with a time, 10 a.m., then added, I'll be present during the entire visit. The next morning, I positioned myself on the porch swing, laptop open to work emails I wasn't really reading, as my parents' unfamiliar rental car pulled into the driveway. They emerged looking like diminished versions of themselves, My father without his usual confident stride, my mother's eyes hidden behind large sunglasses despite the overcast day. I didn't rise to greet them. The front door is unlocked. You have 1 hour. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing as he brushed past me. My mother paused, removed her sunglasses, revealed eyes swollen from crying or lack of sleep or both. "Emma," she began, voice tremulous, "can we please talk about this? As a family?" "We are talking," I replied. "And I'm setting terms as the homeowner. 1 hour." She flinched at homeowner but followed my father inside. I gave them 5 minutes alone before entering myself, then shadowed them at a distance as they moved from room to room, collecting prescription bottles, clothing, my father's blood pressure monitor, my mother's jewelry box. My grandmother's pearls are missing, she called from their bedroom. "Check the small safe in your closet," I answered from the hallway. "The combination is your anniversary." I heard the metallic sound of the safe opening, then a small, surprised, "Oh." In the kitchen, my father filled a box with protein powders and supplements. "Your mother needs her Vitamix," he said without looking at me. "The Vitamix stays," I replied. "It's part of the property." He turned then, eyes narrowed. "That was a gift from me to your mother." "Purchased with my inheritance," I countered. "Or at least, that's what the bank records indicate." Color rose in his face. "You had no right to look at our financial records." "I had every right to look at documentation regarding my inheritance." I leaned against the door frame, affecting a casualness I didn't feel. "The inheritance I never received because you and Mom decided I didn't need it." "We were protecting you," he exploded, hands gripping the edge of the counter. "You've always been so cautious with money, so risk-averse. That money would have sat in some boring investment account for decades while you worked yourself to death in a job you barely tolerate." His words hit like physical blows, not because they hurt, but because they revealed the lie he'd been telling himself, that spending my inheritance had somehow been for my benefit. "That wasn't your decision to make," I said quietly. "It was mine. My inheritance. My choice." "We're your parents. You stole from me," I interrupted. "You committed fraud. You violated my trust in a way I can't even fully process yet. So don't stand in the kitchen you renovated with my money and tell me you were protecting me." My mother appeared in the doorway, jewelry box clutched to her chest. "Robert, please, let's just get what we need and go." "Linda, I will not be lectured on financial responsibility by our daughter who just made us homeless out of spite." "I didn't make you homeless," I said evenly. "The bank made you homeless because you didn't pay your mortgage. I simply purchased a foreclosed property at fair market value. A property that was our home for 30 years. A home you were willing to risk and lose despite having the means to save it. My means." We stared at each other across the kitchen island, decades of unspoken truths hanging between us. All the times I'd been told to be practical while Olivia was encouraged to dream. All the sacrifices that had gone unacknowledged. All the love that had felt conditional on my usefulness. "Your time is up," I finally said, glancing at my watch. "You can schedule another visit to collect more items tomorrow." "Emma, please," my mother tried again. "We're family." "Yes, we are," I agreed. "And family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't lie to family. Family doesn't treat one child as an investment and another as a cash withdrawal." I followed them to the door, watched as they loaded boxes into their rental car. As they prepared to leave, my father turned back, eyes cold with a mixture of anger and something that looked almost like respect. "You're more like your grandmother than we realized," he said. It wasn't a compliment. "Thank you," I replied, and closed the door. Alone again, I wandered through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. So many memories lived in these walls. Christmases, where Olivia's pile of gifts dwarfed mine. Dinners where my academic achievements were acknowledged with distracted nods while my sister's C+ in algebra earned celebration. Quiet moments with Grandma Martha in the garden, teaching me the names of flowers while slipping wisdom between the petals. I paused at the fireplace mantel, studying family photos I'd never really looked at critically before. In almost every one, Olivia was centered, highlighted, the focal point. My parents beamed at her. I stood slightly apart, slightly behind, a supporting character in my own family narrative. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of that unbalanced love. Not just disappointment or resignation, but genuine grief for the childhood validation I'd never received, the security I'd never felt, the belonging I'd always chased but never quite caught. Tears came then, not the silent, managed tears I'd permitted myself in private moments throughout my life, but raw, guttural sobs that bent me double in the empty living room. I cried for the little girl who'd tried so hard to be worthy of equal love. I cried for the young woman who'd worked overtime while her sister traveled Europe. I cried for the adult who'd discovered she'd been robbed of opportunity by the very people who should have championed her success. When the storm passed, I wiped my face, stood straight, and made a promise to myself. This house would become a home. My home. A place where I was centered, where my worth wasn't measured against anyone else's, where the walls held new memories of self-respect rather than old patterns of invisibility. That night, I slept on the living room couch, not out of necessity, but choice. Tomorrow, I would clear out my mother's meditation space and reclaim my bedroom. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of making this house truly mine. But tonight I allowed myself one last evening of transition, of acknowledging where I'd been before stepping fully into where I was going. As I drifted toward sleep, Grandma Martha's voice echoed in my memory. The trick to surviving in this world, Emma, is knowing your worth before someone else tries to name your price. I finally understood what she'd been trying to teach me all along. Olivia arrived 3 days later. I was in the backyard pulling weeds from the neglected garden when I heard the Uber pull away from the curb. My sister appeared around the side of the house, rolling suitcase bumping along the uneven flagstone path, oversized sunglasses perched on her head despite the typical Portland drizzle. "This feels weird," she said by way of greeting, stopping several feet away as if uncertain of her welcome. I sat back on my heels, garden gloves caked with mud. Which part? Coming home or knowing I own the place? Both. She glanced around at the overgrown yard. "What are you doing?" "Reclaiming Grandma Martha's garden. Mom let it go to weeds years ago." I pulled another dandelion, adding it to the pile beside me. "Your room is ready whenever you want it." Olivia nodded, shifting her weight awkwardly. In her tailored coat and designer boots, she looked as out of place in this unkempt garden as I had always felt at her glamorous New York gallery openings and restaurant launches. Two sisters from the same home who might as well have grown up on different planets. "Have you seen them yet?" I asked, not looking up from my work. "I'm meeting them for dinner." She hesitated. "They wanted me to convince you to let them move back in." I laughed, a short, sharp sound that startled us both. Of course they did. "I told them I needed to understand the situation first." That made me look up. Olivia, who had always taken our parents' side without question, was actually reserving judgment. It was unprecedented enough to make me set down my trowel. "Come inside," I said, peeling off my muddy gloves. "I have something to show you." In the kitchen, I washed my hands while Olivia examined the renovations with new eyes. "This is all from your inheritance?" The countertops alone were nearly $30,000. I dried my hands and gestured for her to follow me. "Come upstairs." I led her to my parents' bedroom, where I'd cleared a space on the carpet and laid out financial documents in chronological order, bank statements, credit card bills, loan applications, all carefully annotated with sticky notes in my precise handwriting. What is all this? Olivia asked, crouching down to examine the papers. The receipts. I knelt beside her. I've been gathering records for the past 3 days. That folder shows the deposit from Grandma's estate, $175,000 explicitly designated for my education and future in her will. I pointed to another stack. These are the withdrawals and transfers that followed. Olivia picked up a bank statement, eyes widening as she read. They used it for my apartment in New York? And your startup, and Spain, and the kitchen, and Dad's car, and a timeshare in Cabo we never used because Mom didn't like the humidity. I watched her face as realization dawned. They spent every penny of my inheritance within 18 months, Liv, without telling me it existed. She set down the paper, hands trembling slightly. I didn't know it was your money. They told me they'd been saving for my education since I was born, that they wanted to invest in my future because they believed in me. The implication hung unspoken. They hadn't believed in me the same way. I always thought. Olivia trailed off, then tried again. I always thought you just preferred saving over spending, that you chose community college because you were practical, not because. Not because I couldn't afford better, I finished for her. I worked 30 hours a week throughout college to pay tuition. I took out loans for my accounting certification. I lived with 3 roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment for years to make ends meet. While I was living in a doorman building, in Manhattan, she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. On your money. I hadn't expected this, hadn't expected her to grasp the magnitude of the deception so quickly, or to accept her unwitting role in it. I'd braced for defensiveness, for justifications about how I didn't need the money because I was already so responsible. Instead, my sister looked gutted. There's more, I said, handing her another folder. The foreclosure didn't happen suddenly. They've been behind on the mortgage for 2 years. They took out a second line of credit against the house after spending my inheritance. Then a third. The property went underwater even before the market downturn. Olivia flipped through the documents, financial jargon swimming before her eyes. She'd never been good with numbers. Another difference between us that our parents had framed as her being creative and me being rigid. Why didn't they tell us they were in trouble? She asked. Why didn't they ask for help? They did ask me for help, I said quietly. Multiple times, small amounts at first, a few, 100 here, 1,000 there. Emergency repairs, property taxes, medical bills. They never asked me for anything. Because they knew I would say yes and you would say no. Because I was the responsible one and you were the dreamer. No accusation in my tone, just stating facts as I understood them. And because I think deep down, they were ashamed to need help from the child they'd always treated as secondary. Olivia set the papers down and looked at me directly. I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't see it. Any of it. The apology, sincere, unqualified, caught me off guard. Olivia had never apologized to me, not when she'd borrowed my sweaters without asking, in high school and returned them stained. Not when she'd forgotten my college graduation because a casting call came up. Not when she'd dismissed my accounting career as selling my soul to capitalism while living on my inheritance money. It's not your fault, I said, surprised to find I meant it. You didn't know. But I should have seen how they treated you differently. I benefited from it my whole life without questioning it. I shrugged, uncomfortable with her sudden insight. We were both playing the roles they assigned us. The golden child and the worker bee? She winced at the description. Is that really how you see us? Isn't it accurate? Olivia was quiet, for a moment, then gestured to the documents spread around us. What are you going to do with all this? Nothing, I replied. I don't need to sue them or expose them. I've done what I needed to do by buying the house. I just wanted to understand exactly what happened, and I wanted you to understand too. So I can tell them you're justified? Be your messenger? No. I began gathering the papers, so you can make your own informed decisions about your relationship with them going forward. I'm not asking you to choose sides, Liv. I know they're still your parents and you love them. She helped me collect the documents, her perfectly manicured nails a stark contrast to my practical short ones. They're your parents too. Yes, I acknowledged. But love doesn't erase accountability. They stole from me, lied to me, and then expected me to house them after they lost this place through their own financial negligence. I'm allowed to have boundaries, which include buying their house and changing the locks. There was no judgment in her tone, just clarification. Which include buying a foreclosed property that had sentimental value to me and ensuring I have control over who enters it. Yes. Olivia nodded slowly. Can I still have dinner with them tonight? Of course, I said, surprised she'd asked. Permission. You're an adult. Your relationship with them is your business. Will you come with me? The question was tentative, almost childlike. I stared at her, trying to determine if this was a setup, if my parents had instructed her to get me to a neutral location where they could gang up on me, wear down my resolve. But her expression was open, uncertain. Why would you want me there? I asked cautiously. Because I have questions for them that I can't ask alone. She twisted a ring on her finger, a nervous habit from childhood. Because I think I've been living in a family narrative that wasn't real, and I need to understand what was. Something shifted between us in that moment, some rearrangement of the roles we'd played our entire lives. For the first time, Olivia wasn't the confident golden child, secure in her favored position. She looked lost, questioning the very foundation of her identity. And I, always the follower, the supporter, the responsible but invisible sister, was being asked to lead. I'll come, I decided, but I can't promise I'll stay if they start manipulating the situation. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. We had 2 hours before dinner. I showed Olivia to her bedroom, preserved like a museum exhibit to her teenage self, complete with cheerleading trophies and boy band posters, then retreated to the master bathroom for a shower. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, still uncomfortable with claiming my parents' bedroom despite legally owning it now. Under the hot water, I tried to prepare mentally for the evening ahead. I'd expected to face my parents again eventually, but not this soon, and certainly not with Olivia potentially on my side. The shift in dynamics was dizzying. For most of my life, family confrontations had followed a predictable pattern. My parents united with Olivia, me alone on the other side, eventually capitulating because what else could I do? Now the alignments were uncertain, fluid. I dressed carefully in clothes that projected competence and confidence. Dark jeans, a crisp button-down shirt, leather boots. Professional but not formal. Approaching this dinner like a business negotiation felt safer somehow than treating it as a family reunion. Olivia emerged from her room wearing a dress I recognized from her Instagram, some designer collaboration that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment would be. But she'd toned down her usual dramatic makeup and jewelry, as if respecting the seriousness of the occasion. You look nice, she said, sounding almost shy. So do you. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, a small action that still gave me a jolt of ownership. My keys, my door, my house. Dad texted. They're already at Mateo's, Olivia said as we walked to my car, a practical Honda with excellent gas mileage and fully paid off. Another study in contrasts. My sister had never owned a car, always believing rideshare services were more cosmopolitan. Mateo's was a mid-priced Italian restaurant in the Pearl District, expensive enough to signal the occasion was important, affordable enough that my parents could plausibly cover the bill in their current financial situation. Neutral territory, but with enough ambient noise to ensure privacy and conversation. They were waiting at a corner table when we arrived, my father rising automatically at our approach. My mother remained seated, her smile faltering as she registered my presence. "Olivia didn't mention you were joining us," she said, tone carefully, modulated to hide her displeasure. "I invited her," Olivia replied before I could speak. "I thought we should talk as a family." The word hung awkwardly between us as we took our seats, Olivia and I on one side of the table, our parents on the other. A battle line drawn in breadsticks and water glasses. A server arrived to take drink orders, providing momentary reprieve from the tension. My father ordered wine for the table without asking preferences, a habitual patriarchal gesture that suddenly struck me as presumptuous rather than generous. "Just water for me," I countermanded quietly. "I'm driving." My father's jaw tightened at the implicit rejection of his authority, but he said nothing. When the server departed, silence descended again, heavier than before. "How are you settling into the hotel?" Olivia finally asked, her usual social grace rescuing us from the standoff. "It's temporary," my mother said quickly. "We're looking at rental options." "On what income?" The question escaped before I could stop it, direct and pointed. My father's face darkened. "We're not discussing our financial situation at dinner." "Why not?" Olivia surprised me by pressing the issue. "From what Emma's shown me, your financial decisions have affected all of us. I think we have a right to understand what happened." My parents exchanged glances, communicating in that silent married language perfected over decades. My mother looked away first, fingers nervously rearranging her silverware. "We made some investments that didn't work out," my father said stiffly. "The economy has been unpredictable." "That doesn't explain why you spent Emma's inheritance," Olivia persisted. "Or why you never told her about it." The direct confrontation from their favored daughter visibly startled them. My mother's hand flew to her throat, fingering the pearl necklace she'd retrieved from the safe, the one she'd claimed was missing. At first, "Olivia, sweetheart," she began, reaching across the table. "There are nuances to family finances that—" "Don't," I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. "Don't try to complicate what's actually very simple. You received money specifically designated for me in Grandma's will. You spent it all without telling me it existed. That's theft, not a nuance." The server returned with drinks, misreading the tension as he cheerfully asked if we were ready to order. We weren't, but my father ordered appetizers anyway, controlling. The smallest details when larger ones had slipped beyond his grasp. When we were alone again, my father leaned forward, voice low and intense. "We were trying to protect you, Emma. You've always been so cautious, so afraid of risk. That money would have sat in a savings account earning nothing while you continued living like a college student into your 30s. That wasn't your decision to make," I replied evenly. "And we both know that's not why you did it. You did it because you've always seen me as an extension of yourselves, rather than as an individual with my own needs and dreams." "That's not fair," my mother protested. "We've always supported your independence." "No," I shook my head. "You've always exploited my independence. There's a difference." The appetizers arrived, calamari and bruschetta artfully arranged on white plates. No one moved to take any. "I just want to understand," Olivia said into the strained silence. "If Grandma left that money specifically for Emma, how could you legally use it for other things?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "The money was left to Emma in a trust that your mother and I administered until she turned 25. I am 27, I pointed out, and have been for 2 years. Yes, well, he cleared his throat. By then, the trust was depleted. Because you'd already spent it all, I finished for him. On Olivia's education, your car, your kitchen, your timeshare. On family priorities, my father corrected, an edge creeping into his voice. We made decisions based on what was best for the family as a whole. And yet somehow what was best for the family always aligned with what Olivia wanted and what you wanted, never what I needed. I kept my tone even, factual. Funny how that worked out. Emma, my mother sighed, you've always been so dramatic about perceived slights. We love you and Olivia equally. No, you don't, Olivia said quietly. You don't, Mom. I see it now. The table fell silent. My mother's eyes widened in shock, my father's narrowed in calculation. I sat perfectly still, as stunned as they were by my sister's words. Olivia, my father began, voice gentle in a way it never was with me. You're upset right now. Emma has obviously been filling your head with her perspective, but you know how she exaggerates. Does she? Olivia withdrew her phone from her purse, tapped the screen a few times, then set it face up on the table. Because I found the video from my 21st birthday dinner, the one where you gave me that sapphire necklace, the one you said was a special investment in my future. She looked directly at them. That was 2 months after Grandma died. That necklace came from Emma's inheritance, didn't it? My parents said nothing, but their silence was answer enough. I'm not hungry anymore, I said, placing my napkin on the table and standing. Olivia, I'll wait in the car when you're ready to leave. I'm coming with you, she said immediately, gathering her purse. Girls, please, my mother reached for us both. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, I replied. The house is mine. Your belongings will be packed and ready for pickup next week. After that, we can discuss what kind of relationship, if any, we want going forward. I walked out without looking back, sensing rather than seeing Olivia follow. Outside, the evening air felt cleansing against my heated skin. I breathed deeply, leaning against my car as Olivia caught up. She trailed off, searching for words. Illuminating? I suggested. I was going to say awful, but yes, that too. She hugged herself against the chill. I'm sorry, Emma. For what? For benefiting from their favoritism my whole life. For not seeing it. For not standing up for you before now. I studied my sister's face in the streetlight, so similar to mine in features, so different in expression. Always animated where I was reserved, confident where I was cautious. The golden child finally seeing the tarnish on her crown. Thank you for standing up for me tonight, I said simply. She nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. What happens now? Now we go home, I replied, unlocking the car. My home, and we figure out where we go from here. As we drove back to the house, my house, I realized that the most unexpected consequence of buying my parents' foreclosed property wasn't the ownership itself, but the rearrangement of family dynamics it had triggered. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. I was the center. And the power that came with that position wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about the opportunity to build something new from the ruins of what had been taken from me. The following week passed in a blur of activity. Olivia extended her stay, working remotely from her childhood bedroom while I continued my own job from the dining room table. We established an unexpected rhythm, coffee together in the mornings, separate workspaces during the day, takeout dinners in the evenings where we began the delicate process of rediscovering each other as adults rather than as the roles we'd been assigned as children. Did you always want to be an accountant? Olivia asked one night over Thai food, a question so basic yet one she'd never bothered to ask before. I twirled noodles around my fork, considering. Not always. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was little. Remember those Jacques Cousteau documentaries Grandma Martha used to watch with me? I remember you had that stuffed whale you carried everywhere, Olivia said, smiling at the memory. What happened to that dream? I shrugged. Reality? Marine. Biology requires expensive education. When it became clear I was financing college myself, I chose something practical that would lead to stable employment. But if you'd had the inheritance, I might be tagging sea turtles in the Galapagos right now instead of reconciling spreadsheets. I said it lightly, without bitterness, though the truth of the lost opportunity still ached somewhere deep. Olivia set down her fork. I never even asked what you wanted. All those years, I just assumed you chose the safe path because that's who you were. It is who I am, partly, I acknowledged. But choices made under constraint aren't always true. Reflections of desire. She nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About how many of my choices weren't really choices at all, but performances of the role I was given. The creative free spirit, I supplied. The irresponsible dreamer, she countered. The one who needed constant financial support and validation. What if I was only those things because it was expected of me? What if I leaned into being scattered and artistic because that's how they defined me from the beginning? It was a startling moment of self-awareness from my sister, who had never been particularly introspective. She'd always seemed so comfortable, in her favored position that I'd assumed she was oblivious to its artifice. Do you regret the opportunities you had? I asked carefully. No, she admitted, but I regret that they came at your expense without my knowledge. And I regret never developing skills you were forced to learn early: budgeting, planning, self-reliance. She hesitated, then added, I'm almost 30, Emma, and I've never paid a bill that wasn't on auto draft from an account Mom and Dad set up. I've never fixed anything more complicated than a loose button. I don't even know how to check the oil in a car. Those are all learnable skills, I pointed out. They're adult skills, she corrected. Skills I should have developed years ago instead of being sheltered from them. We were interrupted by my phone ringing. My father's contact illuminated on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, as I had every call since the disastrous dinner. You can't avoid them forever, Olivia noted. I'm not avoiding them. I'm establishing boundaries. I set my phone face down on the table. Their belongings will be packed and ready for pickup tomorrow, as promised. That's all the contact we need to have right now. They've been calling. Me too, she admitted. Separately. Mom in the mornings, Dad in the evenings. They think I can convince you to be reasonable. And can you? She met my gaze steadily. I'm not going to try. This is your house, legally and morally. They made their choices, and now they're living with the consequences. It was still strange to hear my sister, the eternal mediator, the pleaser, the one who'd run interference for our parents throughout childhood, so firmly on my side. Part of me kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for her to reveal that this newfound solidarity was just a sophisticated manipulation tactic. But Olivia seemed genuinely changed by the revelations of the past week. She'd spent hours going through the financial records I'd gathered, asking thoughtful questions and expressing increasing dismay as the full picture of our parents' deception emerged. She'd even insisted on reviewing the foreclosure purchase documents, educating herself on the legal and financial aspects that had always bored her before. What will you do with the house long term? She asked now, returning to her dinner. Will you live here? I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to sell it and use the proceeds to start fresh somewhere completely new. Part of me feels like I've earned the right to remake this space in my own image. You could rent it out, she suggested. Generate passive income. I laughed. Listen to you, talking about passive income streams. Who are you and what have you done with my sister? She grinned, a flash of her old carefree self. I've been watching financial independence videos online. Did you know people retire at 40 now? It's a whole movement. I did know that, actually. Some of us have been planning for retirement since our 20s. Show off, she teased, then grew serious again. Whatever you decide about the house, I'll support you. And I'll keep paying my own way from now on. Speaking of which, I hesitated. You've been here nearly a week. Don't you need to get back to New York soon? A shadow crossed her face. About that, I need to tell you something. She set down her fork, pushed her plate away, and took a deep breath. I lost my apartment in New York 2 months ago. I couldn't make rent. That's why I was able to come here so quickly. I've been couch surfing with friends while trying to figure out my next move. I stared at her, processing this revelation. Why didn't you tell me? Or Mom and Dad? Pride, she admitted. And shame. I've always been the successful one, the one with the glamorous life. I couldn't bear to admit I'd failed. Failed at what? Life doesn't come with a scorecard, Liv. Failed at independence. Failed at being a functioning adult. She twisted her napkin nervously. The startup tanked last year. Turns out there's not actually a market for artisanal dog accessories at those price points. I've been freelancing as a social media consultant, but it barely covers basics. When my roommate moved out, I couldn't afford the place alone. So you've been essentially homeless while our parents were losing their house, I summarized, and none of us knew about each other's situations. Pretty dysfunctional, right? She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The perfect family that can't even communicate basic truths to each other. I considered her revelation, turning it over in my mind. The golden child had been struggling all along, maintaining a facade of success while barely staying afloat. Just as I had maintained a facade of contentment while nursing deep resentment. We'd both been playing our assigned roles right up until the moment reality made them impossible to sustain. Stay here, I said abruptly. What? Stay here. Not permanently, but until you get back on your feet. The house has 4 bedrooms. We'd have plenty of space. Olivia looked stunned. You'd do that? After everything? You're not the one who stole my inheritance, I reminded her. And you stood up for me when it counted. Besides, I added with a small smile, I could use help fixing the place up. I just told you I can barely change a light bulb, she protested. Then you'll learn. We both will. We can remake this house together, and maybe remake our relationship in the process. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Why are you being so kind to me when I was awful to you for years? Were you, though? I considered the question seriously. You were self-centered and entitled, yes. But you were also a child being molded by parents who set us up in competition with each other. The favoritism wasn't your fault. But I accepted it, benefited from it, never questioned it. And now you are questioning it, I pointed out. Now you're trying to make amends. That counts for something with me. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. We'll be there at 10 a.m. tomorrow for our things. Tell Olivia to be ready to come home with us. We've found an apartment that has space for her. I showed the message to Olivia, who read it with a frown. They still don't get it, do they? They're still making plans for me without asking what I want. Old habits, I murmured. What do you want me to tell them? She straightened her shoulders, a new determination in her expression. Tell them I'll be here to help facilitate the move, but I'm staying with you afterward. I'm an adult making my own decisions now. I typed the response, feeling a strange mix of pride and protectiveness toward my younger sister. For so long, I'd been envious of her position as the favored child. Now I could see the ways that favoritism had stunted her growth, leaving her without necessary life skills and confidence in her own judgment. Our parents' preferences had damaged us both, just in different ways. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, typical Portland spring weather that matched the somber mood in the house. I'd spent the weekend boxing up my parents' belongings, keeping Olivia's assistance to a minimum. This was my reckoning, my closure ritual. Each photo frame wrapped in newspaper, each garment folded and packed, each book and trinket sorted and contained felt like a step toward reclaiming the space as my own. Their lives fit into 23 medium-sized boxes, 6 suitcases, and a few pieces of furniture I'd agreed to release back to them. My mother's vanity, my father's reading chair, the antique side table that had been a wedding gift from his parents. I'd arranged everything in the garage for efficient loading, labeled with sticky notes in my precise accountant's handwriting. Olivia and I waited in the kitchen, both dressed as if for a business meeting rather than a family gathering. My charcoal, slacks and ivory blouse, her black jeans and gray cashmere sweater, armor of a sort. "Are you nervous?" she asked, fidgeting with her coffee mug. "No," I replied honestly. "This feels like the most straightforward interaction we've had in years. They're coming to collect their belongings. No subtext, no emotional manipulation, just a simple transaction. You know it won't actually be that simple." "I know they'll try to make it complicated," I corrected, "but I'm not obligated to participate in that dynamic anymore." The doorbell rang at precisely 10 a.m. My father had always been punctual, a quality I'd inherited and that Olivia before now had cheerfully ignored. I opened the door to find both my parents standing on the porch, looking diminished somehow. My father without his usual commanding presence, my mother's makeup unable to fully conceal the fatigue around her eyes. Behind them sat a rented, moving truck and, unexpectedly, my Uncle Jim, my mother's brother, emerging from the driver's seat. "You brought reinforcements," I observed, stepping back to allow them entry. "Jim offered to help with the heavy lifting," my father replied stiffly. His gaze moved past me to Olivia, standing hesitantly in the hallway. "Princess, ready to come home with us?" The childhood nickname, one I'd never been given, made me wince internally. But Olivia merely shook her head. "I'm staying here with Emma for now, Dad. I told you that in our text exchange last night." His face darkened. "That's ridiculous. You can't possibly want to stay in this situation." "This situation is my sister's legal residence, which she's kindly invited me to share while I figure out my next steps." Olivia's voice was calm, but firm. "I've made my decision." My mother pushed past my father, reaching for Olivia's hands. "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this out of some misplaced loyalty. We found a lovely 2-bedroom in Lake Oswego. You'd have your own bathroom, plenty of space for your things." "Mom," Olivia gently extracted her hands. "I'm almost 30, years old. I don't need to live with my parents anymore. I need to learn independence, and Emma's giving me that opportunity." "Independence?" my father scoffed. "From the daughter who stole our home?" "Robert," my mother cautioned, shooting a nervous glance my way. "No, Linda, I'm done tiptoeing around this." He turned to face me fully. "You've turned your sister against us, convinced her of your twisted narrative, painted us as villains because we made necessary financial decisions for the good of the family." "I haven't turned anyone against you," I replied evenly. "I simply showed Olivia the documented facts about where her education money actually came from, the decisions you made, the trust you violated. She's formed her own conclusions." "Convenient that those conclusions align perfectly with yours," he snapped. Uncle Jim appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Should I start? Loading boxes or—" "Yes," I said decisively, grateful for the interruption. "Everything's organized in the garage. I've made an inventory list that you can check against as you load." "Always the accountant," my father muttered, but moved toward the garage with, "Jim." My mother lingered, eyes darting between Olivia and me as if trying to identify the exact moment she'd lost control of both her daughters. "Mom," Olivia said gently, "please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing to become self-sufficient, which I should have done years ago." "With her help?" My mother's voice cracked slightly. "The daughter. Who's thrown us out of our home?" "The daughter who legally purchased a property that was in foreclosure," I corrected. "And yes, Emma's helping me learn skills I should have developed long ago. Budgeting, home maintenance, financial planning. My mother's face crumpled. I don't understand what's happening. When did you two become so cold? So calculatingly cruel? The accusation stung, as intended. For a moment, I second-guessed everything. The foreclosure purchase, the changed locks, the packed boxes. Had I truly become cold in my pursuit of justice? Had resentment hardened me beyond recognition? But Olivia spoke before I could, her voice clear and confident in a way I'd never heard before. We're not being cruel, Mom. We're being adult women making decisions based on facts rather than emotional manipulation. There's a difference. My mother stared at her as if seeing a stranger. In a way, she was. The Olivia who had existed solely to reflect our parents' expectations and fulfill their vicarious dreams was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, clearer, more grounded in her own truth. You've changed, my mother whispered, the accusation unmistakable. Yes, Olivia agreed simply. I have. We stood there, three women locked in silent recognition of an irrevocable shift, until my father's voice called from the garage, breaking the moment. Linda, come look at this. Emma's organized everything by category, even labeled which boxes have fragile items. My mother turned without another word and walked stiffly down the hallway toward his voice. Olivia and I exchanged glances, hers questioning, mine resolute. We're okay, I assured her quietly. This is hard, but necessary. She nodded, took a deep breath, and followed our mother to the garage. I remained in the entryway a moment longer, listening to the sounds of my former life being loaded into a truck, box by box, memory by memory. It should have felt cathartic, this physical separation, this concrete severing of ties. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also a deep, aching sadness for the family we could have been if love had been given freely. Rather than conditionally, if worth had been recognized rather than assigned, if truth had been valued over convenient fictions. But that family had never existed except in my wishful imagination. And now, among the ruins of what had actually been, something new and unexpected was emerging. A genuine connection with my sister based on honesty rather than competition, mutual support rather than resentment. I joined the others in the garage, watchful but not participating as they loaded the final boxes. My father worked in grim silence. My mother dabbed at tears with a tissue. Uncle Jim maintained an awkward running commentary about the weather and the traffic. Olivia stood beside me, our shoulders occasionally touching, a subtle reminder of alliance, of changed loyalties, of new beginnings. When the truck was fully loaded, my father approached with a sheet of paper in hand, the inventory list I'd created, now checked off item by item. Everything's accounted for, he said stiffly, handing it back to me, though I still maintain that several of these items are rightfully ours, regardless of who owns the property. The items I kept are fixtures of the house, I replied, refusing to be drawn into another argument. But if there's something specific you feel strongly about, we can discuss it another time. How generous of you, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm, to offer to discuss our own possessions. Dad? Olivia stepped forward. Let's not do this now. You have everything you need for your new place. Let's focus on moving forward. He looked at her with naked hurt in his eyes. You're really staying here with her? After everything we've done for you? I'm staying, she confirmed gently. But this isn't permanent, and it's not a rejection of you. It's just something I need to do for myself right now. We'll drop your things at Goodwill, my mother said suddenly, voice brittle. Since you've apparently outgrown your childhood. It was a petty jab, aimed at Olivia's sentimental attachment to her possessions, but my sister merely nodded. That's your choice. I've packed what matters most to me already. She gestured to the single suitcase she'd brought from New York, now containing the few treasures she'd selected from her bedroom over the past week: photo albums, journals, the stuffed rabbit she'd slept with until college. Watching my parents' faces as they registered this final evidence of Olivia's independence, this clean break from her role as the perpetual child, I felt a strange wave of compassion. They looked lost, bewildered by the collapse of the family dynamic they'd engineered and maintained for decades. "We should go," Uncle Jim said, checking his watch. "The apartment manager is meeting us at noon to hand over the keys." My father nodded curtly, then fixed me with a hard stare. "This isn't over, Emma. What you've done, it's unforgivable." "What I've done," I replied quietly, "is establish boundaries after a lifetime of having them ignored. Whether that's forgivable isn't up to me to decide." He turned without another word and stalked toward the truck. My mother hesitated, looking as if she wanted to say something more, but ultimately followed him in silence. Uncle Jim gave an awkward half-wave and hurried after them. Olivia and I stood side by side in the driveway, watching as the moving truck pulled away, carrying the physical remnants of our shared past. My sister's hand found mine, squeezed briefly. "Now what?" she asked softly. I turned to look at the house, my house, with its blue shutters and wraparound porch. The house that had witnessed my invisibility and now would host my renaissance. The house I'd bought not out of spite, but out of a deep hunger for justice, for recognition, for the chance to rewrite my own story. "Now," I said, "we rebuild. Not just the house. Everything." 6 months after buying my parents' foreclosed house, I stood in the freshly painted living room, surveying the transformation. The walls, once beige, now gleamed in a soft sage that caught the morning light streaming through windows we'd cleaned and resealed ourselves. The hardwood floors, hidden for years under my mother's Persian rugs, had been sanded and refinished to reveal their natural honey tones. Family photos had been replaced with local artwork and photographs I'd taken on weekend hikes, landscapes that spoke of possibility rather than obligation. "Emma, the moving truck is here!" Olivia called from the front porch, where she'd been waiting with coffee and pastries for the new tenants. I took one last look around the space that had witnessed so much: my invisibility, my awakening, my reclamation, and felt a surge of peaceful certainty. Letting go of this house wasn't surrender. It was the final step in my healing. 3 months earlier, I'd made the decision to rent out the property rather than continuing to live in it. Despite our renovations and the new memories Olivia and I had created, the house still held echoes of the past I was trying to leave behind. Each creaking floorboard, each familiar view from the windows, each room arrangement reminded me of what had been taken, even as I celebrated what had been reclaimed. Olivia had understood immediately when I broached the subject over our now traditional Sunday morning pancakes. "You need a fresh start," she'd said, nodding thoughtfully. "Somewhere without ghosts." "Not ghosts," I'd corrected. "Just fingerprints that won't wash away." We'd found a duplex across town, a charming 1940s building with arched doorways and built-in bookshelves. 2 separate units sharing a wall and a backyard, offering both independence and proximity. The perfect balance for sisters rediscovering each other after years of assigned roles and artificial distance. Now, as the young family that would be renting our childhood home began unloading their moving truck, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. Their excited voices drifted through the open windows, parents directing, movers, children claiming bedrooms, a dog barking at the novelty of it all, life continuing, stories overlapping, the house becoming a palimpsest of experiences rather than a monument to what I'd lost. Olivia appeared at my side, handing me a steaming mug of coffee. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I replied honestly. "This feels right." She bumped my shoulder gently with hers, a gesture of affection that had developed between us over the months of working side by side, painting walls, installing fixtures, learning to be not just sisters, but friends. "They seem nice," she observed, watching the family through the window. "2 kids, a golden retriever, and did you see the dad's Star Wars t-shirt? Classic nerd family. They'll appreciate the built-in bookshelves we refinished. And the rainbow." "We painted on the kids' bedroom ceiling," I added with a smile. The renovation had been an education for both of us. I'd discovered a talent for woodworking and precision painting. Olivia had revealed an unexpected eye for design and color theory. Together, we'd transformed the house room by room, exercising old memories by creating new ones, turning a space that had witnessed our diminishment into one that celebrated our capabilities. "Ms. Parker?" The new tenant, Rachel, a pediatric nurse with kind eyes and capable hands, appeared in the doorway. "We're just about to bring in the couch. Is there anything else we should know before you go?" I handed her the labeled set of keys we'd prepared. "The back door sticks a little in humid weather. Just lift while you turn the key, and the 3rd stair from the top creaks no matter what we did to fix it." "Character?" she said with a understanding nod. "That's what we wanted in an older home." "You've got it in spades," Olivia assured her. "Wait until you see how the afternoon light hits the dining room. It's magical around 4 o'clock. As we said our final goodbyes and walked to my car, loaded with the last of our personal items, I found myself studying my sister's profile. The physical resemblance to our mother was still there, but something fundamental had shifted in her carriage, her expression. The perpetual girlishness our parents had cultivated in her had been replaced by something more grounded, more authentic. "What?" she asked, catching my scrutiny. "Just thinking about how much has changed," I replied. "You look different." "Well, I'm not surviving on ramen and cheap wine anymore," she joked, patting her stomach. "Regular meals and actual vegetables will do that." But we both knew I meant something deeper. In the months since our parents' departure, Olivia had undergone a transformation that went beyond the physical. She'd launched a legitimate social media consulting business, targeting small local enterprises rather than chasing glamorous but unstable clients. She'd learned to cook, to manage a household budget, to change the oil in my Honda. She'd even started therapy to untangle the complex web of expectations and identities our parents had woven around her. "I feel different," she acknowledged as we got into the car. "Like I'm finally becoming the person I was supposed to be all along, not the person they needed me to be." I understood exactly what she meant. My own journey had been the mirror, image of hers, learning to take up space, to express needs, to believe in my own worthiness beyond utility, to dream again. "Have you heard from them lately?" I asked as we pulled away from the curb, the house growing smaller in the rearview mirror. Olivia nodded. "Mom texted yesterday. They're still in the Lake Oswego apartment. Dad's consulting part-time with his old firm. She wanted to know if we'd consider Sunday dinner sometime." "And what did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a nervous habit from childhood that emerged in moments of uncertainty. "What about you? Any contact?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Uncle Jim called last week. Said Dad's heart condition is worse. Not critical, but concerning. He thought I should know." We drove in silence for a few blocks, both processing the complexities of family ties that stretched but never quite broke, no matter the damage inflicted. "Do you think we'll ever have a normal relationship with them again?" Olivia finally asked. "Define normal," I countered with a small smile. "Fair. Point." She gazed out the window at the familiar Portland streets sliding past. "Maybe I should ask, do you think we'll ever have a healthy relationship with them?" I considered the question carefully. Not without fundamental changes on their part. Recognition, accountability, genuine remorse that goes beyond being sorry. They got caught, or sorry, they lost the house. So, Not likely. Not impossible, I corrected. Just not something we can force or manufacture through our own forgiveness. It has to come from them, and they have to do the work. The conversation faded as we turned onto the street where our new duplex waited. A fresh chapter, a blank page. As different from our childhood home as we now were from the daughters who had lived there. The months since buying my parents' foreclosed house had been both harder and more rewarding than I could have imagined. The initial aftermath had brought challenges I hadn't anticipated. Legal threats from my father that never materialized into actual lawsuits. Flying monkeys in the form of extended family members calling to express their disappointment in my cruelty. Social media posts from my mother that vaguely referenced ungrateful children and the pain of maternal sacrifice. But there had also been unexpected allies. Uncle Jim, after helping my parents move, had reached out privately to express his long-held concerns about their financial behavior and treatment of me. "Martha would be proud of you," he'd said, invoking my grandmother's name like a blessing. She always worried they'd snuff out your light. Two of my mother's oldest friends had quietly disconnected from her social media campaigns and sent me supportive messages, having witnessed years of subtle diminishment that I'd thought no one else noticed. And most surprisingly, there had been Olivia, my sister, my former rival, now my staunchest supporter and housemate. Our weekly financial planning sessions had become a ritual, spreadsheets and budget apps replacing the competition and comparison that had defined our relationship. For decades, she celebrated my promotion at the accounting firm with genuine enthusiasm. I cheered her growing client roster without resentment. We were learning, slowly but steadily, to exist outside the roles we'd been assigned. As we unloaded the last of our belongings into our respective sides of the duplex, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. Not just the 6 months since I'd changed the locks on our childhood home, but the years of invisible labor, of swallowed objections, of quiet planning that had preceded that moment of reckoning. "Earth to Emma." Olivia waved a hand in front of my face. "Where'd you go just now?" "Just thinking about everything that's happened." How differently things turned out than I expected when I first saw that foreclosure notice. She leaned against the kitchen counter, her kitchen counter, in her space, that she was paying for with her own earnings. "What did you expect?" "Honestly, just justice. Consequences for their actions. Closure." I arranged a stack of plates. In the cabinet, thrift store finds with mismatched patterns that somehow worked together, like Olivia and me. I didn't expect reconciliation between us. I didn't expect to feel so free. "Free," she repeated thoughtfully. "That's exactly it, not just from them, but from who we thought we had to be." The doorbell interrupted our moment of shared understanding. Through the window, I glimpsed a delivery van parked at the curb. "I'm not expecting anything," I frowned, moving to answer it. The delivery person handed me a large, flat package wrapped in brown paper and secured with twine, then quickly retreated to their van without explanation. No return address was visible, just my name in unfamiliar handwriting. "Secret admirer?" Olivia teased, peering over my shoulder. "More like secret something," I muttered, carrying the package to the kitchen table and carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a framed photograph, professional quality, black and white, showing 2 young women on a beach. It took me a moment to recognize my grandmother Martha at perhaps 20 years old, her arm around another young woman of similar age, both laughing at the camera with wind-tossed hair and unguarded joy. A note was taped to the back of the frame, the handwriting now unmistakable as my mother's. "Emma, found this while unpacking. It's your grandmother with her sister Judith, 1962. Martha always said this was taken the summer she decided to become an accountant, against her parents' wishes. Thought you should have it. Mom." No apology, no dramatic plea for forgiveness. Just a simple acknowledgement of connection, of inheritance more meaningful than money. the inheritance of spirit, of determination, of charting one's own course despite expectations. I showed the note to Olivia, who read it with furrowed brow. Is this her version of an olive branch? Maybe, I said, studying the photograph more closely. Or maybe it's just her recognizing something true, whether she can fully admit it or not. The women in the photograph radiated confidence and possibility, a visual echo of what Olivia and I were building now, against different odds but with similar determination. I hadn't known my grandmother had a sister, or that she'd faced family opposition to her career choice. These fragments of history had been buried beneath the more convenient narrative my parents had constructed, one where my practical nature was a limitation rather than a strength, where my career was a consolation prize rather than a chosen path. Are you going to respond? Olivia asked, gently touching the edge of the frame. Not yet, I decided. This isn't an emergency requiring immediate reaction. I can take time to process what it means, what I want to say, if anything. She nodded approvingly. Look at you, setting boundaries like a boss. We finished unpacking in companionable silence, each lost in our own thoughts, but connected by shared understanding. As evening fell, we ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my living room, furniture arrangement still a work in progress, and toasted with grocery store wine in coffee mugs. To new beginnings, Olivia proposed. And to hard-won wisdom, I added. Later, after Olivia had returned to her side of the duplex and I was alone in my new space, I placed my grandmother's photograph on the mantel above the small fireplace. The women's faces, caught in that moment of authentic joy 7 decades earlier, seemed to offer both approval and challenge. See what's possible when you claim your own story? I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the girl on the couch to the woman who had purchased a foreclosed house not out of vengeance but out of self-respect. The woman who had changed locks, not to keep people out but to ensure that entry was on mutual terms. The woman who had packed away the fragments of an unequal past to make room for a more balanced future. My parents had thrown away my inheritance, the financial legacy that might have changed the trajectory of my early adulthood. But in doing so, they had inadvertently pushed me toward claiming a different kind of inheritance. The strength to stand up for myself, the courage to demand recognition, the wisdom to know when holding on hurts more than letting go. The ringing of my phone interrupted these reflections. Uncle Jim's contact appeared on the screen, unusual for him to call this late. Emma? His voice sounded strained when I answered. Your father's in the hospital. Heart attack. Not severe, but concerning. Your mother asked me to call you. A complex wave of emotions washed through me. Concern, wariness, residual anger, unexpected compassion. Is he stable? Yes, they're keeping him overnight for observation. Thank you for letting me know, I said carefully. Please keep me updated on his condition. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my new living room, turning this development over in my mind. 6 months ago, I might have dropped everything and rushed to the hospital, slipping automatically into the caretaker role regardless of how I was treated. Now, I recognized both the gravity of the situation and the importance of maintaining the boundaries I'd established. I texted Olivia with the news, then composed a brief but direct message to my mother. Jim told me about Dad. Glad to hear he's stable. Please keep us informed about his condition and any support needed upon his release. Then I returned to unpacking books onto my new shelves, the act of arranging them by topic and author, both practical and symbolic, creating order from chaos, finding places for the stories that mattered, leaving behind those that no longer served. Tomorrow would bring decisions about hospital visits and family obligations. Tonight was for honoring the journey that had brought me here, to this modest duplex with its newly painted walls and empty spaces waiting to be filled with a future of my own design. I picked up a small wooden box from the packing materials, scattered around the floor, the one containing the keys to my parents' former house, now mine, now home to a young family creating their own memories within its walls. I ran my fingers over the cool metal, these small objects that had represented so much: power, justice, boundaries, freedom. Then I closed the box and placed it on a high shelf. Not hidden, not forgotten, but no longer needed to be clutched. Close! Just one chapter in a story that continued to unfold, page by page, choice by choice, into something I was finally writing for myself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.